Hi, I'm Heather Breslow, and today we'll be talking about building a values-aligned research career. In my lifetime, I've experienced some very painful losses of people really close to me. I've spent a lot of time grieving and with people who are grieving. I also recently became a hospice volunteer, which means that everyone I meet is expected to die within 6 months. That's what makes them eligible for hospice. One of my dear friends died 11 years ago of cancer. He left behind his wife and 2 kids, and more lifelong friends than I've ever seen anyone have. He was given 18 months to live, but he died 10 years later. So for an entire decade, his death was a presence that helped him live. In those 10 years, we covered a lot of ground in our conversations about the things he was so deeply grateful to experience on a daily basis, and all the milestones he didn't think he'd be alive to witness. We talked about his worries and his fears, and how he kept himself curious and engaged, and even how he built resilience, which he did amidst the certainty that he would soon die and the uncertainty of not knowing when. In hospice, they call these kinds of conversations a life review. What I found to be so consistent through my experiences of loss is that for people who know they're dying, they're proud at the end of their lives of the times they were able to be fully present and connected with other people. They're grateful for the opportunity to experience rich emotions, to love and to be loved, and to have been part of the communities that define them to their core. Some years ago, I had a job where I couldn't escape the feeling that if I died while I still worked there, it would be a tragic loss of life. Not because of my age or because I had a young child, but because my existence was a tragic loss of living. In explaining this to my therapist, who I was seeing for the first time, I said, I feel like I'm frozen inside a block of ice. I've lost touch with everything that used to bring me joy. I want to be present with my family and my friends, but in between waves of anxiety, I can't feel anything at all. Why couldn't I connect with my emotions anymore? On the one hand, you might think this is a story about burnout, and it is to an extent, but more than that, it's a story about fear. I was afraid that if I allowed myself to feel any of my hard feelings about the work I was doing, about things I was asked to stand by that I didn't believe in, or that asked of me more than I wanted to give as the parent of a young child, I'd be faced with a decision that I wasn't ready to make. So I avoided feeling anything at all. I'd taken that job because I believed in the mission of the company. At some point, I stopped believing that the company's priorities were aligned with that mission, but I stayed. What kept me in that job, and this was not values aligned for me and I'd never do it again, was the potential financial upside. It didn't even play out that way, which is a beautiful irony that reinforced this lesson. No amount of money would have been worth the emotional numbness I spent the next 2 years thawing out from. I strayed from all the lessons I'd previously learned about how to live my life in ways that were aligned with my values. And this was a mistake. Building a values-aligned career offers an opportunity to reframe growth or success, moving away from a focus on outcomes like performance or promotion or pay, and toward a focus on process and on an alignment between your actions and what you personally value most. This is what we'll talk about as we explore that idea today. First, we'll talk about what values are and why they're so liberating. We'll talk about data collection and how it looks different with an N of 1, and what it looks like to put your values into practice. First, what are values? The simplest definition is that values are your chosen ways of being and showing up in the world. Values shape why you do things, they're motivators. You might tell me, I value having a positive impact on others in ways that make their lives better. That's why I'm a researcher. They also shape how you do things, your approach. You might say, I value approaching questions from a place of curiosity, and I bring that into every collaboration I have with my peers and every conversation I have with the user. And they help you decide what to do, how you'll spend your time. You might say, I value being in community, and attending this conference is one way to do that. This is different from the way a lot of us have been taught to think about our careers in terms of milestones or accomplishments. The question becomes, why is that degree or promotion or way of spending time important to you? At the burning core of it all, what's driving you toward pursuing those goals? That's the benefit of knowing your values. They help you interpret your experiences and choose an approach. They can also keep you grounded in times of change or uncertainty, or when you're faced with big decisions. When I was getting my PhD, I worked with someone who wrote a book called Children and Nature, Peter Kahn. He's a developmental psychologist who studied something I really cared about, but I was admitted to grad school under a specific condition. Peter had gotten a 4-year grant from the National Science Foundation, and I could go work with him and be funded on this grant for 4 years if I would study the human relationship with robots, not nature. Peter's lab has started asking questions about human interactions with and through personified autonomous technologies. Do people think personified autonomous agents can be harmed, experience unfairness? What happens when they cause harm or create unfairness? And at the intersection of two trends, increased interaction with technology and decreased interaction with nature, what would that mean for deeply human qualities like reciprocity or creativity or authenticity? This felt like a loss to me because I'd spent several years researching and thinking about the human relationship with nature, and humanoid robots was a major shift. But my values oriented me toward doing it anyway. My curiosity and the part of me that's novelty seeking, and my desire to teach and do research at the university level, and I needed a PhD for that. Add to that the fact that I looked up to Peter, and what I knew about his work was so inspiring. In time, all the questions the lab was researching became super interesting to me, and they're more important to the world we now live in than I ever could have imagined. In the end, it was the content of my work that unlocked doors in Silicon Valley I didn't even know were there. Why is it so liberating to make values-based decisions? It's because you're defining success for yourself. You're not letting anyone else do it for you. Not capitalistic or patriarchal or racist structures, faceless corporations that might have you believe that success is grinding toward that next promotion. What if success for you is balance? Would you even want the responsibility that came with that next promotion? Or might it move you off your center in a way that maybe you don't want right now? Or maybe it's taking risks, and with that, accepting and learning from your failures. You succeed when you fail. Or maybe you're trying to be more emotionally vulnerable, and that makes you tired. So success is carving out time to recover. It's so tempting to take our craft and overlay it on this process, as if our values are the answer to an equation or a problem to be solved. But it doesn't work like that. We're not here to control variables and collect data across a population in ways that are rigorous or replicable. We're talking about an N of one, and that evolves and changes with us over time. So our approach inherently has to be a little bit different. If you take one thing away from this talk, let it be this: your emotions are your data. The way to access this data is by paying attention to how you feel, to what's at play in the space between your face and your feet, as a friend of mine says. The founder of acceptance and commitment therapy, Stephen Hayes, has a phrase, "We hurt where we care." If we turn away from difficult emotions, we'll also wind up turning away from the things that matter most to us. But by turning toward your difficult emotions especially, you learn a lot about what you value. Maybe that's through mindfulness. I put myself in certain environments that make this easier, like being outside in nature, or surrounded by Post-its and Sharpies. Maybe you have a meditation practice where you bring your attention to what's causing your thoughts, feelings, or a physical response, and just allow it without judgment. Welcome it even. The key idea in all of this is finding ways to drop into your emotions, to hold space for them without judgment, and to pay attention to what they're telling you. But this is hard. Lots of people have a hard time trusting themselves, and for valid reasons. Maybe you're a perfectionist, or you have a fear of failure, or past trauma, cultural or societal expectations, or even feeling like you aren't worthy of happiness or love. To that, I'll say this: you are the expert on yourself. Not only are you worthy of happiness and love, but you're the only person who has an entire lifetime of experience with yourself. You have unique insight into your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, and that makes your voice the one you need to listen to when you're figuring out what your values are. There have been times where I wasn't sure whether some of my personal values were even relevant to a work context, because not all your personal values will overlap completely with what you value at work. An example is non-judgmental presence, really being present with people. One of my dear friends wrote to me on my 40th birthday and said, "For a very long time, our friendship has been the safest space that I have." When I first read those words, I sat with them for a long time just to experience what it felt like to hear that from someone who I love so deeply. And later I wondered, how might I bring that characteristic of relationships, the non-judgmental presence that creates a feeling of safety, into my work, into my role as a manager? Was there even a place for that at work? I had an opportunity to try this when someone on my team came to me and said, "I really messed up. I just realized the way I analyze something in this foundational project is totally wrong, and a bunch of teams have already made decisions based on the work." And then they started to cry and apologized for crying. I've done this. The old me would have said, "Don't cry, let's fix this, we'll get it sorted out." I literally would have said, "Don't feel your feelings, let's problem solve." But what does that do? It might make someone feel supported, like you have their back. But it's not an opportunity for them to feel or for me to offer presence or compassion. Instead, I said, I can see that you're upset. Anyone would be upset in this situation. But what would you say to someone else on our team if they made this mistake? I might have also said something like, it's okay to feel your feelings. I think at first they were a little confused by my approach, but then they said, you didn't do it on purpose, and you found the issue, so now you can fix it. And it's okay to feel disappointed. My experiment worked. Someone on my team made a mistake, and it became an opportunity for presence and connection. As a leader, this didn't feel like incremental growth to me. It felt like a paradigm shift. Like I figured out how to be more authentic, another marquee value of mine, more authentic in more contexts, including at work, where we spend so much of our lives. It shifted how I show up for people in the same moments where I might have jumped right to problem solving before. What's more is that it was obvious to me that this is somewhere that the seeds of community could grow. And that got me thinking, what if all researchers, what if all of us as a community could evolve together in this way? What if we could operate in ways that create that necessary feeling of safety and trust and belonging and support? We're so close to that already because we pride ourselves on the empathy we bring to our interactions with the people who use our products, and we think deeply about the world we're creating for them. What if all of us were better able to use our own emotions to identify our needs and our values? What could that mean for our teams and also for our customers and the companies we work for? Tara Brach, an American clinical psychologist, author, and meditation teacher, had a recent podcast series about deep listening to ourselves and to other people. She talks about the presence, empathy, and compassion that are required for deep listening and how critical those qualities are to building strong communities. Community is vital to us as researchers. We are highly collaborative, and in my opinion, the best collaborations aren't just the ones that allow you to do more work. They're the ones that allow you to do categorically different work and better work because of that partnership. Perspective taking and seeking to understand others is fundamental to that kind of transformative collaboration. We also learn from each other. We share knowledge, we ask each other questions, we seek and give feedback on our work. That learning and that feedback relies on community. Same thing could be said for getting all the support we need for career development and in our day-to-day jobs. We need to be able to talk about our successes and the challenges we're facing in ways that make us feel seen, that allow us to connect, in ways that feel safe and allow us to grow. And community is part of what makes us effective advocates for our customers, making sure their needs are deeply understood and that they're part of the conversation. We can help each other do this within our organizations in ways that put humans at the heart of our company's decision-making. The values we hold individually or as teams or as a community can be really grounding when we're facing some of the more common challenges that we encounter as researchers. Like, maybe you've made recommendations that you think are in your customer's best interest, but your team cherry picks your insights to tell a story that's different from the one that emerged through your data. Or they ignore your findings entirely because your research contradicted what they wanted to hear. Or worse, feeling like you're being asked to manipulate people into doing things that you think are bad for them. I've been in every single one of these situations, and they've left me feeling uncomfortable and sometimes like I was compromising things I would now consider non-negotiable. What knowing your values buys you when you don't feel understood or you feel conflicted is a way forward that allows you to honor yourself by making decisions that move you closer to what you care about. It's also important to feel like you're doing this among a community of people who either share your values or who value the process of getting to them. Making values-aligned decisions is like dropping an emotional anchor that keeps you where you want to be. In the past year, with the macroeconomic climate being what it is, we've all had to process a lot of change. I don't know if there's such a thing as change fatigue, like decision fatigue, but if that exists, I'm definitely experiencing it. When I joined my team at Google about a year ago, we had an offsite, and we defined our collective identity and our shared values. My team values trust, autonomy, creativity, empathy. Evolving the team in ways that would align more closely to these shared values became part of my strategy. But before we could really get started, the inevitable happened, as is common at tech companies large and small. There was a reorg. And that was followed by a round of layoffs. To an extent, that changed who we work with and what we focused on, but what stayed the same was how we work and why we do what we do. The older I get and the more experience I have, and loss always brings this into full relief for me, the more convinced I become that the whole point of being alive is to feel everything as it's happening, The more you can feel any emotion, joy, wonder, love, fear, sadness, pain, the more you can feel all emotions. What that means for me as a manager, how I bring this value of rich emotional experiences into my job, is by showing up for my team in ways that make it okay for them to process change in whatever ways they know how. I bring a willingness to sit with the discomfort that uncertainty creates and all the feelings that might arise because of it, for myself and for my team. This builds trust and it builds community. My hope for us as a community of researchers is that more of us can get to a place where we know what we stand for, as researchers, as managers, as leaders in the field, as whole human beings who are living our one and only lives. I hope we take the opportunity to do this emotional work that will keep us grounded at times of change, that makes others feel seen and supported and like they belong, that will help us better navigate ambiguity and uncertainty, and that can keep us human-centered no matter what the fourth industrial revolution has in store over the coming years and decades. This starts with you, and it is about you and what you value, and it's about your teams and what they value, and about this community and what we value, and about the fact that we are in a position as researchers to bring these hallmarks of really rich and meaningful human experiences into the products we ship and the companies we work for, so we can positively impact the billions of people who use the technology that only a handful of us build. As I wrap, I want to extend a huge thank you to those who inspired this talk and whose perspectives have shaped mine. I'm also grateful to those of you who provided feedback in ways that were curious, kind, compassionate, and encouraging. When you need the same, I'll be here. Thank you.